Thank you very much for the introduction, Natalie, on that. I'm delighted today that I'll be joined by two of our European ambassadors. We have Sean Gibbons, who represents the UK, but also has a wide global experience, and we'll be tapping that as well too for information with regard to our discussions. And also as well, we will have Carmel Lindkvist, who is based in Norway, and we'll be looking to see how our North European colleagues experience FM in terms of some of the areas that I'll be covering here today. So I've got, first of all, before I do it, maybe I should ask Carmel and Sean to introduce themselves a little bit, and I'll start with Carmel, please.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to celebrate today in such good company. I'm a professor in facility management based at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. And I've been researching and educating and working with practice for about 20 years in facility management. So I'm really looking forward to engaging and maybe drawing on some of my knowledge in the discussion today. So just a very short introduction here, Pat.
Short and sweet, Carmel. That's the way to have it. Okay, thank you very much for that. And Sean?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'll try and keep it nice and short and sweet as well. So I'm Sean Gibbons. As Pat said, I'm the EuroFM ambassador to the UK. I'm also currently the vice chair of Global FM. I've more than 30 years of international experience. My most recent role was global head of facility management and real estate for Roche, which is a big pharmaceutical company based in Switzerland. That was a role that I held for 15 years, and whereas responsible for developing and implementing things like workplace, real estate, FM strategies, obtaining ISO 41001 certification for a big portfolio operating in more than 100 countries. So nice to meet you all.
Okay, great, Sean. Thank you very much for that introduction as well too. And we'll start off with a few questions really. And first one I want to turn to really is the whole issue of outsourcing of FM services. We've seen quite a number of changes and evolutions over the last number of years, from in-house delivery to bundled outsourcing to total FM. In terms of your experience of the FM delivery models currently in your own countries, and we'll start with Carmel first. What are you seeing there in terms of the evolution of FM outsourcing?
My colleagues actually did a research study a few years ago, Tora Haugen and Nora Klunstedt, on this topic, and while they were noticing that there was an increase in outsourcing there, but in Norway there was still, most of the services were still in-house, so like I think there is an indication that there's still that element of control. But I think there is this it's also like to take into consideration that it's really dependent on how big the property portfolio is, because large organizations necessarily need the resources to manage properties well. And I know in NTNU that they often do like comparison of services across their different campuses in order to kind of understand them. So and I think a lot of their services are in-house. I imagine that this is much more different for an organization with a smaller property portfolio, because it's more expensive for a smaller company to manage its own resources and its own tasks and activities to support the company. So I would assume it's very much dependent on how large the property portfolio is. But like I think as Natalie was mentioning, everything is a change and everything's in flux. So and sometimes a facility management organization within a company don't have the competency meet the change. So there is good reasons to start outsourcing. I know with some of the organizations we work with, especially with digitalization, where they're trying to figure out whether to have it in-house or outsource, they are outsourcing it. So I think it's kind of adapting and living with uncertainty and being able to adapt in a good way, and having those sourcing models that can deal with that kind of adaptation and change.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for that, Carmel. And Sean, maybe the same question for you about the UK experience.
Yeah, sure. I can give that. Sorry, I'm a bit out of breath. I had to run quickly up and down the stairs to take a parcel. So that's the benefits of home working for you. Yeah, so back to the question. And I think looking at it broadly, I think the industries have certainly evolved significantly. I think moving from in-house delivery to outsource models, and these range everything from bundled outsourcing to total FM and everything in between. There's several different models, I think, in vogue, and I think, as Carmel said, it depends on the size of the portfolio, the complexity of the portfolio, the commercial awareness of the organisation, and so on. But these models range from your typical IFM, focusing on outcomes, hybrid models, which is quite popular in Switzerland, where we combine some elements of in-house delivery with external providers, often on a bundled sense. Then we've got managed services. One of the new ones that is starting to see more often is on-demand models. And this is where FM services are provided as needed, often through subscription or pay-per-use contracts. Obviously, technology plays a huge role in enabling this. And these, I think, are becoming of more of interest to small companies, and things like co-working and flex spaces and so on.
Okay, and do you think a model like on-demand, Sean, is going to work for those companies who need a more, what I would call, a Lycra approach to their FM delivery in terms of expanding and contracting depending on their needs and requirements?
I think they will. I mean, I think it depends on the sector. I think it depends on the complexity of the services being delivered, and also the service levels that are required as well. And I think, their niche market is clearly for smaller companies that don't want to have a big 3 or 5 year contract with a major service provider. And also, as I said before, these flexible arrangements where you have drop-in space, flexible workspace, that kind of thing, where it's difficult, almost impossible to predict what the demand for services will be throughout a normal course of the week.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for that. And in terms of FM outsourcing, predominantly a lot of FM outsourcing in the past has been operational and probably at best tactical in terms of how it delivers FM for client organisations. Are we starting to see a more strategic involvement of outsourcing by FM companies, or is that still the domain of the main client FM organisation? And I'll take you first, Carmel, please.
Well, I think it's challenging to do change without having the strategic on board. But I think often you see the changes that are required at the operational and the tactical level. So I kind of think that it is necessary to continue with identifying where change is needed, but trying to kind of build that more into get it on the strategic level so that the investment is there, and there is awareness. And I think the sustainability and digitalization is driving that need to kind of start to think at the strategic level for companies, because when we think about sustainability, it's really kind of putting, I think, facility management to the fore, and with the theme with resilience, I find it very challenging. How can a company say that its strategy is to take in resilience if they aren't incorporating facility management within those strategies? So I think where change can be identified, I would see that still at the tactical and operational change, but I still think working in getting into the goals and objectives at the strategic level, I think that is important. But all need to work together, and I think that's the optimal way of going forward.
All right, and for you, Sean, as well, because obviously your experience and background working with Roche on a global level, were you comfortable with giving the FM outsourced companies a more strategic role in FM delivery?
No, I think my own personal experience is that really, despite claims to the contrary, FM service providers really do struggle with offering strategic guidance. I think they're best placed to deliver the tactical and operational outcomes. And I think even if we look at the way that contracts are established, they often emphasize tactical KPIs over strategic outcomes. And I think this, combined with things like, the tight margins in the industry, really ensures that service providers are focusing on this operational, tactical kind of level. I think, in addition, there's also a gap in trust between the client and service providers. I've seen it myself where clients will withhold critical data such as financial plans, and these are clearly needed for strategic input. There's also the reality for service providers that it costs a lot of money to train people to develop strategic capabilities. And I think relying on more tactical and operational people to offer strategic input is not really a way forward. I think there's other aspects. I think, the industry is pretty fragmented. And I think, a lot of smaller providers just certainly would completely lack the scale or resources to offer any strategic input whatsoever. So I think certainly from the client side, they increasingly demand good, solid strategic input. But I think with FM service providers slow to adapt, this is going to be good news for all of those FM consultants out there. They're not going to do you out of a job just yet.
All right, good shout out for the consultants. There's still room for you there in FM outsourcing. And just on this topic, final question on this topic, in terms of then the direction where FM is going to go in terms of outsourcing, where it is going to evolve to, is there still room for the small and medium-sized Indigenous companies in this picture? And maybe Sean, I'll take you first.
Sure. Yeah, I think, as we mentioned before, I think the outsourcing landscape is poised for a significant evolution over the next few years. And we can all see the drivers, the tech advances, the sustainability imperatives, the hybrid working models, which are pretty much standard these days post-COVID, as well as the labour shortages that the industry is seeing. And there's also a big shift in client expectations in terms of service delivery. So I think moving forward, there's probably going to be more consolidation, particularly with the global players buying up smaller FM providers. Although I think niche markets will undoubtedly persist for specialized services, for special asset types, for special industry sectors such as GMP, manufacturing, heritage buildings, and this kind of thing. So I think there will be an avenue for these guys.
Okay, thanks for that. And I'll put the same question to you, Carmel. Is that the experience from the Norwegian perspective?
Yeah, because I agree with Sean. I think that, and I think where I kind of would see, I see the Indigenous companies, the small and medium, kind of filling in the gaps to some degree. And there are, like I think Sean mentioned, the on-demand services. Like that links to how the need for more agility and flexibility in outsourcing models, because things are changing all the time, and we don't always have the key competencies required to adapt to the change. So I think where I see the small medium companies really excelling in is that those kind of plugins that are kind of needed essentially to kind of fill in some of the gaps. But of course, like there's small practices that also need to be managed, and I think those kind of companies will also last there. But I think ultimately in the future, in order to ensure that organizations are supported properly and to be resilient, and we saw the consequences of COVID and how facility managers stepped up there. And I think that was kind of a good kind of lesson learned that we should be taking forward for making our sourcing models resilient in the future. So I think, yeah, we do need to be, the services and the outsourcing models do need to be ready for change and flexibility in the future.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that, Carmel. And in terms, then I just want to move on to really, which is literally a hot topic at the moment, unfortunately, sustainability and the environment in a day when I'm told that Dublin is actually warmer than Athens. So in terms of your own sustainability goals, and I'll take you first, Carmel. What is the national perspective from the Norwegian government point of view? What are they doing to drive initiatives in sustainability with the commercial world?
Well, I know organisations here are very much focused on the environment sustainable governance approaches and then building them into their sourcing models. So I know that many organizations here have kind of developed a lot of key performance indicators within their services to adapt to those aspects. The EU is also quite influential here, the directives there. There's often a lot of reference to the taxonomy. So they are kind of being drawn on. Even though Norway is not part of the EU, it is quite influenced by what are the directives coming out of the EU. But yeah, there is a lot of targets, emission targets to be met, which are currently not looking to be met by 2030. So there is a need to step up and start kind of. And I think there is an awareness among companies to reduce the carbon emissions and save energy and make buildings more robust in to meet the goals that are quite necessary.
All right. Okay. And Sean, again, the UK obviously outside the EU as well too in terms of that. What's the UK government perspective? I know Tony Blair threw a little spanner in the works there a couple of weeks back in terms of his shout out against some of the goals and targets. Do you think the government is doing enough there in the UK to push sustainability?
I think there's a lot going on. I mean, the UK is certainly committed, despite the comments from Blair. So they committed to net zero by 2050, interim targets for 2030, 2035. And there's a whole host of regulations and standards that govern targets, in addition to things like the minimum energy efficient standards, tightening up building regulations, reducing operational carbon emissions, big focus on water efficiency, improving the indoor environmental quality. And since 2022, many large UK organisations are actually required to report on climate-related financial risks as part of their environmental reporting and disclosure requirements. So there's a lot that's going on. There could be a lot more. But as you mentioned, there is a big lobby, anti-net zero lobby that is taking place in the UK, and let's see what impact that has if it knocks the government's direction off course at all.
Okay, and from that point of view, Sean, are the end user customers with the companies and organizations having any impact in terms of the pressure they might bring to bear in terms of wanting more environmentally sustainable initiatives delivered?
Certainly from customers, I think there is. It's becoming more of a focus for many organizations out there, their sustainability, their social credentials, all of these kind of things. And obviously the built environment can play a key role in ensuring that they can reduce their environmental impact as a result. So I think there is pressure. There's always, the cost side that impacts that as well, and the regulations and the structure of the building. And there's a whole host of constraints that exist. But certainly there is more pressure, I think, from the client side to force landlords and developers to build and refurbish environmentally friendly buildings.
Okay, thanks for that. And Carmel, I want to put it to you in your experience, what do you think are the main obstacles to making the existing buildings that we have more sustainable? Is cost one of the main drivers in this?
Well, I think cost is always a bit of an obstacle for facility management anyway. It limits what is possible, but I think facility managers work within that. I think sometimes what is an obstacle is I think earlier Natalie was talking about we need to collaborate and communicate. And I think that's what we need to do more in facility management in order to understand each other's sectors and services, because there's an ecology in the building, and each service and each floor, they're all influencing each other. So if we can create better efficiencies and work closer together, that is one way that we can create much better sustainable buildings. Because I think in some ways facility management is often being worked within silos, and that is a big problem because we don't know how we can optimize our own services to make buildings better. For example, if I take this, you've got energy here as a focus. You kind of mentioned that earlier. And but if you're not connecting that to space management, you can have technically a very good sustainable building. But if it's not used in the right way, then it doesn't matter. So I think being able to make those connections within services, talking more across departments within facility management, I think that's what we need to do more, collaborate. And I think we're still working in silos a little bit there.
Okay, thanks for that, Carl. And Sean, from that perspective, we've seen, obviously, particularly in the Irish market, we've seen a strong uptick in terms of the newer generation buildings that are have the higher standards in relation to sustainability. But at the same time, and particularly I noticed in today's Irish Times, there was a mention of a 75% markdown in terms of the older generation buildings. Is that down to a point of view that they're not sustainable enough for the customers? What are the obstacles there, do you think, in terms of that?
Yeah, I think when you start to look at older buildings from a sustainability perspective, it can become quite complex. There's a lot of obstacles. They can range from planning or conservation restrictions on a particular building. Older buildings often have technical or structural constraints that limit what you can actually do. Upfront costs, as we mentioned before, they're usually pretty high, and generally there's a slow return on investment, which obviously accountants tend not to like. If the building's occupied, a lot of disruption that's caused. And I think one of the fundamental issues that exists is there's a complete lack of detailed, reliable and comparable performance data on these buildings to actually help make informed decisions on what are the actions that are necessary and what will their impact actually be to the business and the building itself.
Okay, Sean, thanks for that insight on that side. I want to turn now to a topic we've already touched on a little bit, and it's one which is foremost in terms of anybody involved in the FM business is the shortage in the labour market. So, I mean, FM is playing a more important role in supporting the core businesses, and particularly since COVID. But we seem to see pretty much everywhere that demand is outstripping supply in the FM labour market. How do you think, and I'll take Carmel first on this one, how are the labour market shortages, do you think? And I know you might have a limited insight from the university side, but what's your own thoughts on this in terms of the labour market shortages in Norway?
I guess based on what I see, I see that we have a master's course in property development and facility management, and our students are nearly all employed by the end of the course. So I do see that they are getting taken up quite quickly. I understand that there is an impact, a challenge in finding the right people for the different jobs in facility management, and I still think it's difficult to find the competency that they need. So often I think, as far as I understand, that organizations are drawing on different disciplines to support the work that they need as well. It's not my strongest area, but that's the impressions I'm seeing based on what I've been seeing. So it's good for our students doing facility management.
Absolutely, a good plug. Get a degree and get a job as you come out of university. That's a pretty good one. Sean, from your point of view, in terms of the labour market shortages in the UK, what do you think are the how do you think that's impacting in on it? Because I've been talking to a number of FM companies, and one of the interesting things I find in terms of tenders is that FM companies are now becoming very selective in terms of which tenders they're going to go for. Maybe they were always selective, but now it's a case of that they literally are not able to, in some cases I've been told, barely able to support their existing customers, never mind expanding. What kind of issues do you think that's going to drive in FM overall?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the labour market shortages in the UK do present a significant challenge for FM moving forward. Last year, I think 2/3 of UK organisations reported difficulties in finding skilled workers. I think this is exacerbated within the FM sector as it, faces growing pressure to improve sustainability, operational efficiency, these kind of things. Impact of that is it drives up costs. It impacts or strains, let's say, service delivery. But I think the positive aspect is it's starting to push the industry more towards greater use of technology and strategic workforce planning in order to mitigate these risks. So the best organizations are proactively addressing this through more innovation, training their people, getting flexible partnerships with service providers who are better positioned to maintain that service quality. So there is a problem, but I think, as people do, they find their ways in order to adapt and move around it. Certainly the best organizations do that.
Yeah, and in terms of the touching on there, you mentioned training, obviously in terms of FM organisations and university, of course, delivering in more and more FM courses. Do you think there's enough of an uptake from and the danger sometimes I see within the FM industry that people start working in the industry, then they start learning in the industry rather than the other way around? We are seeing probably more of that probably in areas like the Netherlands, but I think a lot still in I know in the UK and in Ireland to a certain degree, it's kind of the wrong way around. Do you think there's enough efforts being put into supporting people at apprenticeship level? And I know that EuroFM have pushed that initiative a little bit. Is it working, and is there more that needs to be done?
I think it's working to a degree. Clearly the the results speak for themselves. You know, additional apprentices coming through, more young talent getting into the industry as a first choice career rather than just landing up in FM just because, you know, nobody else wants to do that job. But yeah, of course, there's a huge amount more that can be done to encourage this, and I think, you know, the member associations, EuroFM, Global FM, you know, everyone can play a role in ensuring this can happen in a much more effective way.
Okay, all right, and same for you, Carmel, in relation to how FM is viewed as a career path, really, in relation to that. Is it starting at the secondary school level and evolving into third level, or does that still have a way to go?
I think it has a way to go, because I think many students don't really know about facility management as a career. And like, I think there is still a responsibility for everyone here, practice, research, education, to kind of to build up the opportunities, to illustrate the opportunities. So I think being able to, even though like it's still quite a young discipline, but it's not still established, and it's often not really known what it is by younger generations starting off on a career path. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why they fall into the career rather than see it as an option to go into. So I think there is a bit more to do there too. And it's great that EuroFM has an education side to it to kind of help build up the profile. But I think we could, as you mentioned, Pat, go a bit earlier. Think about, you know, engaging secondary schools a bit more, to highlight the value of being a facility manager.
Okay, would you agree with that, Sean? I know that Mark Whittaker has been quite passionate about getting the news across to secondary level students. Do you think we need to do more, and what should we be doing?
Yeah, absolutely, should be doing more. I think there's a number of ways this can be done. You know, raising awareness, I think, as Carmel mentioned, of FM as a profession, improving entry-level accessibility to the industry. I think, you know, associations leading initiatives to attract underrepresented groups to consider a career in FM. Expand training offerings on emerging skills, you know, smart building technology, data analytics, sustainability, this kind of thing. And I think greater harmonization and adoption of standards and certifications. I think this is something which, you know, everybody's away doing their own thing. And I see, you know, I'm on the ISO committee through the BSI in the UK. What I see is there's a plethora of FM standards being produced, but actually there's relatively few companies that are actually adopting and becoming certified to it. So, you know, maybe we're putting the cart before the horse, or whatever the trend is. So certainly there's a huge amount that could be done. I think other factors, you know, partnering more closely with employers, that kind of thing, investing in research on FM projects that can help to inform the public and raise the profile and awareness of FM, of the FM industry.
Okay, you both touched there. Obviously, we move into talking about FM as a profession, and in a lot of respects, FM has been described really as the Cinderella profession, never getting to the ball, or maybe in this case, never getting into the C-suite in relation to where things are at. Is that an accurate description of the FM profession? And really, does FM need to be in the C-suite to make a difference? I'll take you first, Carmel.
I think it is an accurate description, and it's still it's something that I kind of align with. When I kind of came into facility management myself, I had to look it up what it was, but then when I found out, you know, what it does, it's so important. So I think we do. I think maybe, I don't know. It's often said that we're kind of nearly hiding a little bit as well, and I think we do need to step up. We shouldn't be relying on facilities being bad in order to show when a facility is good. so to be noticed. So I think. We should be shouting our praises a bit more and highlighting why it is what it means to have a good facility, and how it improves the quality of the lives of the people in the facility. Because it's very much, I find facility management very much user focused in what it does. So I still think, we need to shout more the positives of the profession.
Okay, it sounds like we're hiding in plain sight of everyone there in terms of what you're saying. So absolutely,
Yeah.
Sean, I'll put the same question to you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think one of the areas where FM really needs to stand up and get a seat at the table, which we touched on earlier, is on the strategic side. You know, FM is moving way beyond the traditional operational roles and is becoming a critical strategic functions that actually incorporates and aligns with broader organizational goals and objectives, you know, sustainability, digital transformation, risk management, workplace strategy, you name it. You know, many FM leaders have the responsibility for this. A lot of them also have responsibility for the real estate portfolio. And so they're now key contributors to corporate decision making. You know, they help organizations achieve their corporate objectives by reducing carbon footprints, by optimizing space utilization, by ensuring that the services and the environment is optimal for the users that are using them. So I think all of this combined, I think, will propel FM to the next level in the future, and it'll be accepted much more as a strategic profession, in the same way that, you know, a lot of these other professions, HR, marketing, finance, and so on, are automatically assumed as strategic professions.
Okay, all right. And from that point of view, really talking about professionals and the professional organizations, obviously IWFM, IFMA, and also EuroFM, should these organizations be doing more, or are they doing enough, really, in your own opinion? I'll take Sean first on that one.
Yeah, no, I mean, then I think they're doing a lot, but they can do more. And I think, as I mentioned before, you know, it's the raising awareness of FM as a career choice, improving partnering with employers to improve entry-level accessibility, you know, encouraging from a DEI's perspective underrepresented groups to take place, and so on and so forth. So I think there's a whole host of things that can be done from a federation and member association point of view, but it requires working together and agreeing common objectives in order to achieve this. Okay,
thanks. And I'll put the same question to you as well, Carmel.
Well, it's always a simple answer. Yes, we should be doing more, but we always have that limitation of time of how can we do more. But I think we need to kind of, you know, like I know working in EuroFM, I know how busy the board can be, and but I think these are kind of, these moments like today are really nice to kind of highlight how we can do more. To include the members, and I think members also need to take responsibility as well, to engage as well with a lot of the activities as it's happening today. So I think so these kind of moments are really useful. I think the associations within Norway are quite good and quite active as well, and I think the networks are so good at building, at showing our strengths as a discipline, and highlighting the good work that we are doing. So I think there is a lot being done. But of course, more can be done, as we kind of were mentioning, drawing in young people earlier into the profession. But I think the associations are doing a good job in creating these kind of moments that we can come together.
Okay, and from that perspective, do you feel that the professional organisations need to be more connected with business? And by business, I mean not just the FM companies, but the direct businesses themselves, in terms of connecting with them and seeing what they need, particularly as both Sean and yourself said, that the strategic decisions are driven by the client organisations themselves. Do the professional organisations need to connect more directly with the business to drive this forward? I'll take Carmel first. Yeah,
Carmel.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think it is important that they are connecting with the business. Like in the ISO definition, we are a support, so we need to ensure that we are supporting the businesses we want that we want to engage in a good way, and also show more of how we can support. And I think that is one of the good rationales of kind of seeing us as at the strategic level, because facility managers can do more, but they just need to be empowered to do that. And I think being looking at the more strategic level, it brings scope to enable better organization of facility management. So I think it is important that they are engaging with the business.
Okay, and Sean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity for member associations to target and work with service providers, large corporates, that kind of thing, on identifying good talent, tailoring entry-level qualifications and programs. Clearly, there needs to be improved, more competitive pay and benefits, I think, within the FM industry. In my experience, if I compare that to engineering project management, we're still, let's say, the poor cousin in relation to that. And I think also, when I was at Roche, we started to engage more locally with internship programs, that kind of thing, getting kids in who were interested in building tech, sustainability, helping them to work, and then potentially consider that career in FM moving forward. And I think this should really be done not just from the point of view of the corporates, but I think the country associations can play a huge role in facilitating these types of practices.
Okay, all right. And I want to put one final question to you both, and really it's all about the future of FM professional. Will, as you alluded to, will we see technology, and particularly the rise of AI, see maybe a demise of FM to a certain degree, particularly in maintenance, or as Dror Pauly mentioned there just a couple of days ago, AI is too busy to take your job. So which is it in terms of that? Are we going to see a shift in FM? Are we going to see reduction in maybe hard services, and maybe the focus is going to be towards the soft service, the human side of FM delivery? And I'll take you first, Sean, on this one.
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting question, actually. I think the future of the FM profession is exciting. It's transformative. I think it's shaped strongly by the advances we're seeing in tech, the evolving expectations of individuals in the workplace, sustainability imperatives, as well as this broader strategic role within organizations that I mentioned before. I think regarding the tech advances, I think AI automation will certainly not signal the demise of maintenance, but more an evolution, let's say. We're already seeing predictive maintenance powered by AI and sensors, enabling teams to move into a more proactive mode of operating. Anticipating equipment failures before they happen, optimizing the life cycle of assets, reducing downtime, all this kind of thing. This improves efficiency, but it doesn't eliminate the need for skilled human technology, for technology and technicians. I think, in fact, it's actually an opportunity. So it elevates the role of the technician to one who needs more analytical skills, improved decision making, and an oversight of automated system. So I think AI augments rather than replaces the human element when it comes to maintenance.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just going to mention as well, you mentioned soft services as well, Pat.
Yeah.
And I think on that, yeah, as workplaces become, more and more hybrid, employee well-being is really taking the center stage for a lot of big corporates. I think the human side of FM, workplace experience, hospitality services, this kind of thing, I think they'll start to differentiate with the top tier providers, and the best FMs won't just manage and maintain buildings, they'll actually curate environments that boost productivity, that boost collaboration, boost satisfaction, as well as all these technical aspects that go with it that we're traditionally responsible for.
Okay, thanks. And Carmel, I'll give you the final word on this.
Yeah, I think this AI is something I'm very kind of busy with at the moment. But for me, AI in the profession, it's a tool that we should embrace. It can, like we always talk about efficiency and effectiveness. AI is a way that we can help and support in order to kind of find out, instead of going through 100 documents ourselves, use AI to help us find the information we need in a much more quicker way. For me, AI won't replace the knowledge and experience that is implicit in facility managers. And we talked about the strategic area, and strategic sets goals and objectives and plans, whereas AI at the moment, it can help, but it's only feeding in the information. It's only giving out the information that it's been fed in. So I think the whole creativity of facility management is still required in the knowledge and experience. I think overall, in terms of the future for facility management, we need to, I think, as Natalie said earlier, we need to keep learning and take risks and fail and learn from the risks. I think if we're not doing that, we're not going to move forward and be innovative, because I think the only way we can embrace the future is to try and take some of the risks to get to a future where we want to be. So and build on the opportunities being offered and not be afraid of them.
Okay, thanks for that, Carmel. And obviously, to in terms of what you said, then maybe to misquote Beckett a little bit, fail again, and fail better in relation to what we need to do in terms of FM. Well, look, thank you both very much for a very interesting and insightful conversation. So appreciate your time very much, both. So Carmel and Sean, thank you very much indeed for that. And I'll hand over now back to Vera.